You ever have a place that just feels like home? For me, that place was my grandfather's old cabin up in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The smell of pine, the crackle of the firewood, the porch swing that groaned like it was alive. Every inch of that place carried his soul. Grandpa always said a man doesn't own land. He borrows it from his grandchildren. I never truly understood that until he passed, leaving the cabin to me. I hadn't been up there in a while. Life got busy. New job, new apartment, new everything. But when I got the letter from the county saying there was a boundary dispute, I packed my truck and drove straight to the mountains. The road twisted like an old story, and when I reached the ridge, there it was, my grandfather's cabin, still standing proud, and someone else's car parked right out front. I stepped out and saw her. A woman in her 50s, short blonde hair, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, and that permanent frown that screamed entitlement. She stood on my porch like she owned it. "You must be Ryan," she said, her voice flat, rehearsed. "I'm Karen. I own the lot next to this one." Or, she gave a smug smile, "I guess this one, actually." I blinked. "I think you're mistaken. This cabin's been in my family for 70 years. Karen crossed her arms. "Well, my property deed says different. The boundary line runs through this cabin, so technically part of it's on my land." I could feel my pulse rise. "You're kidding, right?" She smirked. "No, I've already talked to the county. They're sending out a surveyor next week. Until then, I suggest you stay off my property." That word, "my," hit me like a punch. She turned and strutted back to her car like she'd already won. I watched her drive off, dust trailing behind her like the wake of arrogance. I walked inside the cabin. Dusty sunlight poured through the windows, catching the old photos on the wall, Grandpa fishing, Grandma smiling beside the porch. It felt like they were watching me, like they were daring me not to give up. That night, I lit a fire and sat in Grandpa's old armchair. I remembered his stories, how he'd fought tooth and nail to keep that land when developers tried to buy it in the 80s. He never budged. And I wasn't going to either. When the surveyor showed up a week later, I was ready. Clipboard in hand, he shook mine and said, "You're the grandson, huh? Heard this one's a bit messy." Karen pulled up right then, stepping out in heels, on gravel. "I'm just here to make sure everything's done properly," she said, emphasizing the word like I didn't belong there. But something in my gut told me the truth was about to come out. And when it did, Karen would wish she'd never stepped foot on my grandfather's land. The surveyor's name was Tom. He was a quiet man with sunburned skin and a tape measure. That looked older than both of us. He didn't say much, just adjusted his cap and started unpacking his equipment. Karen, on the other hand, couldn't keep quiet for more than 5 seconds. "You'll see, Tom," she said, tapping her sunglasses against her palm. "The map clearly shows my property extends 20 feet past that oak tree. That means half this cabin is on my land." Tom just nodded. "We'll see what the data says, ma'am." I stood beside him, arms crossed, trying to stay calm. Grandpa had always been meticulous about boundaries. I remembered him pointing out the stone markers he set decades ago. "These rocks," he'd said, "they'll still be here long after we're gone." As Tom worked, Karen hovered, throwing little comments like darts. "Funny, Ryan, I don't see your name anywhere on the original deed. That cabin's so old I doubt it even meets safety codes. And the one that made my blood boil? It's cute that you're sentimental about it, but maybe it's time to move on." I clenched my jaw. "Karen, you're welcome to stand there quietly or you can wait in your car. Your choice." Her smile tightened, but she said nothing. After a few hours, Tom straightened up. "All right," he said, brushing the dust off his jeans. "We're done here." Karen perked up. "So? What's the verdict?" Tom looked at her, then at me. "I'll have to verify the coordinates back at the office, but something's off. The landmarks on your deed, ma'am, they don't match the physical ones on the ground. In fact," he pointed toward the ridge, "that oak tree you mentioned? It's not the marker. The actual boundary starts about 50 yards past it." Karen blinked. "That can't be right. The realtor, he told me." Tom shrugged. "Realtors say a lot. The survey doesn't lie." I couldn't help but grin. "So what does that mean, Tom?" He looked at me and said, "It means the entire cabin, plus another acre, belongs to you, Ryan." Karen's face went pale. "That's impossible." "My documents," Tom interrupted. Your documents are outdated by nearly 30 years. Looks like whoever sold you that property never filed the boundary update after the county resurveyed the area in the 90s. The silence that followed was golden. Karen's confidence melted faster than snow in July. She opened her mouth, closed it, then stormed toward her car without another word. The gravel spun under her tires as she sped off. Tom packed up his gear and gave me a small smile. Guess your granddad knew what he was doing. I stared at the horizon, the sun dipping behind the trees, painting the cabin in gold. Yeah, I said quietly. He always did. But something told me Karen wasn't done. People like her never leave things alone. Not when their pride's been bruised. And sure enough, a few days later, I got a letter, certified mail, from her lawyer. When I opened the letter, my stomach dropped. Karen had filed a lawsuit, claiming adverse possession, that she'd been maintaining part of the land for years and was therefore entitled to ownership. It was a desperate move, but it meant one thing. This wasn't over. I took the letter straight to my lawyer, Mr. Carter, a seasoned local who'd known my grandfather. He read it once and let out a low whistle. She's grasping at straws, he said. But if we're going to shut this down for good, we'll need more than just that survey. We'll need proof your family's maintained this property the whole time. Lucky for me, Grandpa had kept everything. Receipts for lumber, tax payments, even photos of him fixing the fence line. We spent days gathering evidence. Every scrap of paper told the same story. This land had never left our family's hands. The court date came fast. Small-town courthouse, wooden benches, the smell of coffee and dust. Karen sat across the aisle in a sharp gray suit, tapping her pen against the table. When she saw me, she smirked like she'd already won. Her lawyer stood first. Your Honor, he began, my client has been maintaining and improving the disputed land for over a decade. She installed fencing, trimmed trees, and contributed to the area's upkeep. She simply seeks acknowledgement of what's rightfully hers. Then Mr. Carter rose. With all due respect, Your Honor, what's rightfully hers is a mistake on paper. We have records, photographs, and testimony proving this. Property's maintenance has always been the responsibility of the Whitaker family. He turned to me. Ryan, would you step up? I walked to the stand, hands shaking a little. I looked at the judge, then at Karen. My grandfather built that cabin in 1954. Every summer, we'd repair the fence, paint the porch, and clear brush around the boundary markers, same ones still standing today. Karen didn't plant trees. She didn't fix fences. She didn't even know the property existed until 3 years ago, when she bought the lot next door. Karen suddenly stood. That's a lie, The judge raised a hand. Ms. Howard, you'll have your turn. Mr. Carter handed over the survey report, signed and sealed. The boundary line is clear. Your Honor, it has been since the 1990s. Mrs. Howard's property ends 50 yards short of the cabin. Everything beyond that belongs to my client. The judge studied the papers for a moment, then leaned back. It appears this matter is settled. The land and the cabin legally belong to Mr. Whitaker. Mrs. Howard's claim is denied. The gavel hit the block with a sharp crack. Karen's face twisted, fury and disbelief mixing into one ugly shade. You'll regret this, she hissed as she stormed out. But I didn't, not for a second. When I returned to the cabin that night, the stars were out, clear and endless. I sat on the porch swing, just like Grandpa used to, listening to the wind whisper through the trees. I realized then what he meant. A man doesn't own land. He borrows it from his grandchildren. He'd fought to protect it, and now it was my turn. So I fixed the old Whitaker cabin, signed back above the door, and whispered into the quiet. Don't worry, Grandpa. I'll keep it safe. Moral, don't let greed blind you to what's right. Truth.